went to the store last week and got a little crazy. Bought a whole bunch of apples, and my family didn't eat them. So I've been trying to figure out what I can make that I haven't already made, something new, something exciting. I decided to do an apple cobbler. This is not anything like my peach cobbler that has the pieces of pie dough in it. This is more of a breading, a cake-like that's added to the apples. So the first thing we're going to do, I have preheated my oven to 350 degrees. I have a stick of butter that I've cut up into cubes, and we're going to put that in the bottom of the pan and stick this pan in the oven for about 5 minutes and let the butter just melt. That's our only goal. So while our butter is melting in the oven, I'm going to take 5 apples, and I used 3 Gala apples and 2 Fuji apples, but you can use whatever you like, whatever makes you happy. These are just the apples we have left over. I have a 1/4 cup of flour, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 1.5 cups of packed brown sugar. Now we're just going to toss the apples. Make sure all those flavors get spread all the way around and all the apples are coated. If we don't do this while we're waiting for the butter and the other stuff, our apples are going to turn brown. We don't want that. So that's done. We're going to set those aside and now move on to our batter. So for our batter, we're going to take 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of sugar, 2 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder, and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. Stir all this together. And now we are going to add 1.5 cups of milk. So the way that this is going to work, we're going to take our melted butter out of the oven, pour the batter on top, pour the apples on top of it, and then bake it. As it bakes, that batter is going to rise up, and you'll have some batter in the apples, some on top of the apples. And this is our apple cobbler. Our butter took about 3 minutes, not quite 5. Fully melted. So now I'm going to take that batter that we made and pour it directly on top. Getting all the yummy stuff out. And then we're going to just pour the apples right on top of it. You don't want to leave out any of the sugar or the cinnamon or the nutmeg. That's the yummy stuff. So we're going to slide this into the oven for the next 40 minutes, and then we'll be back. Our cobbler is fresh out of the oven. As you can tell, the batter rose to the top. You can still see some apple pieces in there. It needs to cool for about an hour, and then we can dive on in. It did take 50 minutes to cook instead of 40. At 40, I went in and looked in the oven, and it was still, the batter was still running, and you could tell it was not the golden brown that it needed to be. So I cooked it for another 10 minutes.